not prepped at all. We're going in raw dog.
We're just going to go raw. So, number one, we can always do the intro afterwards, but Zach, Amanda, thank you for inviting us into your home, your kitchen, and being on the podcast. So a little foreshadowing on the kitchen part. But you know, kind of just to give you a quick summary of Fight to Finish podcast, kind of what our aim. It's the biggest thing is like it started off as Sissi and I just having a conversation, right? And kind of like a recorded conversation at a recommendation from friends, like, hey, you guys have interesting banter, and some interesting stories, and you guys have a pretty good network of friends. And so we just started recording, but it's turned into something a little bit more greater than that. I think with Fight to Finish, truly believe a lot of people have stories to tell, right? Whether they're like the established business person, the elite athlete, or like the coding nerd that's living out of their car, right? Right.
Sure.
And so we feel that everybody's got a story to tell, whatever stage in that journey in life they're at. And we feel like we can contribute to the world in sharing some of those stories, and someone can eke out whatever tidbits of life, right?
Right.
And it just might inspire someone else to pursue whatever they want to pursue.
Yeah, and you know, for our listeners, Zach, I've known you for a number of years now. By the way,
I'm sorry. Can I just say I've known Zach longer than I've known Zach. We did our first event together.
That's right. We did 961.
Yes.
Oh.
wow.
So you might have been here before, but we've known each other for longer.
Wow.
OG here. Yeah.
So it is 5 years ago today, we did GORUCK Jedburgh. Today.
Really?
Yeah, it came up in memory. See it? Now look at your face.
Wow. Jedburgh.
So for our GORUCK listeners, especially if you're new to GORUCK, we used to have GORUCK Jedburgh, loosely based off the World War II Jeds. Basically, we've talked about it before, but fieldcraft survival, part of the class, one-day event, 24-hour event.
First 12 hours is fieldcraft.
Yeah. And then the second is like the night evolution was basically a whole culmination of like a night exercise.
Like covert ops.
Yeah. And so, they don't do it anymore. So
yeah, too bad. Yeah. Don't get excited and jump online right now.
Try to ask Jason if they still have it. They do not have it. What class were we?
Ooh.
02?
I honestly, I don't remember any other class beyond
02,
my second one.
Yeah, I think.
I guess
02.
I think it was 02 actually.
02 or 01, because I remember they had
they were
0,
low
0.
number.
Yeah, super low. But anyways, this thought today, March 6th.
5 years.
5 years. It came up on my Facebook feed. So, haha.
Whatever. I've still known Zach for longer.
So for our listeners, we do know each other from the GORUCK community.
Yeah, for a long time.
I guess maybe take us through who you are, what you do, and possibly the reason why we might be here visiting you today and talking to you about kind of projects you're working on.
Sure. Yeah. Let me try to sum it up succinctly if I can. I'm an engineer by education, radio frequency engineer. So I design wireless networks and that kind of thing. I work for Google, doing more paper pushing and project management, that kind of thing nowadays. A lot less engineering, hardcore engineering, which is fine. It's a corporate gig, so it is what it is. Pays the bills. But you know, there's a lot more to people than just what they do at work. And for myself, I've always been huge into food, just an eater and a maker of food. And bread, honestly, was sort of this pinnacle for me. Like, I always dreamed of like, oh man, if I could make bread someday, that'd be dope. Like that would just be, I've made it as far as like the difficulty.
A true baker.
Yeah, you know, I felt bread was one of those mountaintops to climb, you know. And I just kind of a series of traumatic events in my life, you know, parents dying and that kind of fun stuff, that it sort of led me to find more, right? Like you start to realize you don't want to live with regret anymore when you see someone you love kind of pass away. And so it really drove me to do the things that I want to do that really give me a sense of purpose, you know, and baking turned out to be kind of that thing. And I actually, for Christmas, I got this masterclass subscription from Amanda and just sort of absorbed as much as I could from some of the cool chefs that did their thing,
Yeah.
and realized quickly that, wow, I already know a lot of what they're showing me. It definitely nuanced my technique and made me kind of better at cooking in general.
Yeah.
But then that sort of dovetailed into finding some other information around sourdough and sourdough bread. And then I'm like, oh, that's it. You know, like this. I mean, it was so difficult because it was one of those bread crafts that has kind of been forgotten about. And the resurgence has been tremendous recently, the past 10, 20 years. It's really come back into fashion. So I kind of a part of a wave of people doing this now. You kind of realize at some point, like, oh, I'm not original, just sort of doing what everyone else is doing. But once you start making the bread and eating it, and it was difficult, and it wasn't perfect at first. And I'm used to getting things right pretty quickly. And it was one of those things where I couldn't, and it took a lot of effort. And I was like, but I wasn't discouraged. It was like, well, that didn't work out. How am I going to do things differently next time?
Did the engineering brain in you kind of take over in that regard?
That I approach everything from that perspective. I mean, Amanda's laughing because I will literally analyze movies, like,
I bet.
Like cars.
Yeah.
How do they make that stuff? It's like they have wheels, like, and I'll go way too deep into, ridiculous levels of things. And so, like everything else, I do, I'm kind of a psycho hobbyist. I get way too deep into something.
Sure.
And bread became the new psycho hobby to get into. And it kind of absorbed my life to the point where I want to do that now in a more professional, commercial sort of way.
Sure.
As much as I can. It does not pay the bills as well as being an engineer, but
Sure.
it gives my life a lot more meaning and a lot more passion, and purpose. And it connects people because they eat it and they enjoy it and they reflect, oh man, this is like grandma, or I've never had bread this good before, and it's not like I'm making the best stuff ever, but in comparison to what you buy at the store, it's damn shot better,
Oh, yeah.
And, that sort of feedback from people really kind of drove me to want to do more and to be a part of something bigger.
Yeah. I think.
Which so you gave us some bread, and I took it to my coworker. I don't know if I ever told you this, but one of my coworkers was like, Sissi, where'd you get this bread? Like, this is amazing. Like, and I was just like, oh yeah, like a buddy of mine makes bread. He's just like, no, oh my God, this is like so good. He's like, I need more of this. I was like, well, too bad. It was just the one loaf.
my when I took, because I think you gave us a couple loaves one time.
Yeah.
And
I
I make too much. Yeah.
That's a good problem. Keep them coming.
Yeah.
In terms of like, my similar story. Like I think I told you, I messaged you like I had a loaf to myself. And then I was like, I'm going to put this one loaf here into the kitchen where everybody's at. It was gone in like 15 minutes.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And I was like, well, I'm glad I didn't put both out. Otherwise I would not have like my own. Yeah. I mean, I'm not ashamed of it, but I finished that whole loaf by myself. That like literally making sandwiches. And what else did I do with it? I did a bunch of other stuff with it. I was like, I don't know, what else can I do with these ends? I don't know what to do with these ends. And I still made something out of it. It was really, really good. So in terms of, well, number one, what are you calling your bread or this whole side gig you've been doing?
Well, that's, been a lot of development, and I think
you don't have to say if you're not ready.
No, I mean, it's fine. We sort of took a page from the whole, like how Google started in a garage.
Yeah,
We're sort of starting this bakery in a garage, and we just took our street name. That was kind of cool, Briarwood. So we're now Briarwood Bakery is sort of what we're calling ourselves.
Which is interesting now that you say that. Like, there's a lot of, especially in tech, right? And we live in an area with a lot of tech. A lot of which started here out of a garage.
Very simply, yeah.
But yours is a little bit different in the sense that it's not tech. It's
bread, it's a micro bakery.
But still, I think, that's kind of the entrepreneurship around here, right? Like a grassroots, a lot of people doing their own thing on their own time. I mean, like Sissi and I, for example, like this. And you doing something out of your home and sharing it with people around you and sharing with us, I think that's huge. But, something, bread, why bread? Like, was that something that you just were interested in? Or is this like the whole metaphor around like breaking bread and connecting with people? Or is it something where like, why sourdough? That's a better question.
Totally. I mean, as a child wanting to make bread,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And I did as a kid even, and it was just fun to do, but I never really stuck with it. And sort of it being sort of the more difficult thing, doing GORUCK, doing Spartan events, it's sort of like, this isn't hard enough. Like, this has to be harder, right? I have to climb a bigger mountain, right? And so you just keep on going. You keep on throwing down a little harder, right? And so the same thing with bread. That was sort of the pinnacle of it. But after I sort of got over the whole, like, oh, this is hard to do, this is fun, it was so much more soul satisfying. And you start to then look back to how bread used to be. And people, all the gluten-free, this and that, and people like, oh, we're shying away from bread because it's just bad for you and gluten's bad for you. It's because of just what has been done to bread, kind of starting in the 30s, 40s, kind of 20s time frame with industrialization, right? Many mouths to feed, and you got to feed them quickly. And sourdough bread is a very slow process. But that slow process is what made it so nutritious and so good for you, right? And when you sort of speed up that whole interaction by using commercial yeast, that's, they've isolated the specific bacteria that are the most active, and they give you the most bubbles and the most rise. And so within 1 or 2 hours, you have something that's proofed up enough to give you a nice kind of airy loaf.
Yeah.
But the wheat, which is just full of nutrients, there's a phytic acid is kind of locking that away. It binds the nutrients in the wheat. And if you don't sort of release that into the bread, it stays locked up. And that's why you see enriched breads, right? They can't extract the nutrients because they're not fermenting long enough. It's too fast. And since what you get is a very kind of nutritionally barren product, it's like, ooh, we need to put the iron and the niacin, and they all of a sudden you have enriched bread. It's good for you, right? Because we've just doped it full of stuff, right? And chemicals and God knows what. And that long fermentation acidifies the bread, right? Because the bacteria and the yeast, right? The yeast is a fungal bacterial colony, right? And when you make it, it takes like a good 10 days to create your own starter, but all it is flour and water. That's it, and you just let the natural yeast in the flour and in the air kind of inoculate. And you have to curate that and feed it over that 10-day period, because there's almost like warring factions, right? The fungus on one side and the bacteria on the other, and they're fighting it out until, enough bloodshed leads to peace treaties, they establish better colonies, processes, and then modern society develops, and you get this whole kind of like a kombucha SCOBY, right? You get this combination of the two that are now harmonious. And they've kicked out all the bad stuff, all the bad bacteria that might contribute to, not so good things. Right. And now you have this stable colony that you maintain, right? And that's what my starter beast. You
named it Beast.
I almost threw him out by accident. I almost washed him down the drain.
Oh no!
And I had like just a little bit of like yeasty water in the bottom. I was like, oh no! And I fed it, and he came back.
So that was enough.
Yeah, it was like, oh cool. Man, I saved him. And I'm like, man, you're a beast. Yeah, there you go, my beast yeast. Right? And so part of that whole process, as it's eating the flour, right? The enzymes break down the flour, the starch into sugars, right? Because starch is just complex sugars, right? And so when those sugars break down, the bacteria eat that, and they produce lactic acid, right? And carbon dioxide. That's where all the bubbles are. That lactic acid acidifies the bread and actually breaks down the other phytic acid. And so it separates the nutrients from that other acid during that fermentation and releases it into the bread, right?
Question.
Yeah.
Did you know all this going in, or is this like, again, psycho hobbyist?
Psycho hobby. Yeah. Oh no, I just like read books and imbued myself with as much information as I could, and just kind of the history of this stuff and how kind of important it's been to human history for a very long time. And only recently, the past 100 years, we've mucked with it a bit, right? And
commercialized it.
Yeah, and that kind of ruined all these nutritional benefits.
Yeah.
And so getting back into sourdough, it's actually sort of a health food. It's a prebiotic. It's kind of pre-digested, right? The yeast is actually digesting the flour, right? And then the gluten comes from the protein in the flour, right? That's just protein.
Yeah.
And so the protein is the strength, and the starch is kind of everything else, the binder, right?
Yeah.
And the food for the yeast. And that's what releases all those nutrients. And then it makes it way more tasty, right? You get that release of acid, and that's flavor, right? And then salt as well. And that's really it. It's just flour, water, salt, and yeast, which itself is just flour and water.
I think you touched
That sounds so simple.
And that's the beauty of it.
Yeah.
And people discovered yeast by, they had flour and water just like left over sitting in a corner, and it got all bubbly and weird and kind of stinky, and once you have a starter for a while, you enjoy that funk, that acidic, alcoholic smell. You're like, that's a good starter. And you start appreciating, you actually eat it, right? You taste it and whatnot to actually know what's in it. And the starter becomes a part of you, and you're a part of it. Like when you're working with the dough with your hands, right? Part of you becomes part of the bread. So every bread made by a baker has their signature to it, right? And that's just part of the biology of the whole thing.
Right.
But we have to kind of respect the bacterial colonies on us and in us, and kind of nurture them as much as possible. And that's how you get good gut health and general, better intestinal health and that kind of thing. So it was, on one level, delicious bread, right? That you look at bread as now an ingredient. It's not just a vessel, like a blank vessel.
Something that you can do with, like how I was using it as a sandwich.
Yeah, but like a BLT, it's not just what are they?
It's an ingredient.
Bacon, lettuce, tomato, but really the bread is now another flavor component, and that makes the sandwiches so much better because now the bread tastes good.
That's it.
It is.
I think that's it. Now that when you put it in that context, that's definitely what it is in terms of. When I made my sandwiches out of your bread, I was like, why does this taste so much better? And I think it's because of that.
There's a fundamental flavor there.
Yeah.
So I'm interested. Do you ever, like, when you're like tasting your breads and stuff, do you ever do like food pairings with it?
Ooh,
to see like how it compares with like different foods?
I think just organically, just as we're eating it, maybe not like specifically trying to.
You haven't like sat down and been like,
best.
okay, let's see.
You're like orange sauce and sourdough.
It's sort of, a little bit. Like for me, it's butter and honey. Toast it.
Ooh.
Butter, honey
Honey
is the ultimate. It is. I eat that every day, like every morning. That's kind of my breakfast, and it's incredible. And
sorry, I just imagined it.
Yeah, it's
on camera. You'll see me kind of just look up and go,
longingly.
a little drool.
But yeah, it was, that aspect of it being an ingredient, the health, and for Amanda, she has some allergies that were actually sort of corrected and helped a bit by the use of probiotics. Predominantly, right? Just making sure you kind of maintain that.
Gut health for sure. Yeah.
And then the bread was actually this transformative thing that kind of
no more lactose pills for being lactose tolerant.
Wow.
A dairy
that's
allergy
awesome.
that was more of a lactose intolerance.
Yeah.
And when I met her, it was like I had to figure out how to bake without dairy and how to like reconfigure everything I do. Because I was like, oh no, butter and cream, and that makes it good, right? Oh no, like I like her. Oh damn it,
The one thing.
Yeah, I'm a big food guy. Oh no. But over time, we just discovered it wasn't so much like an anaphylactic allergy; it was more of just an intolerance. And she was really dedicated to kind of improving her gut health, and getting on this sourdough train just really dovetailed perfectly into that.
Kind of like a sidebar question. How important is it to, like, let's say someone's working a 9 to 5, like myself and everybody else, right? And they have a side project or gig or passion, something where they're innately just like deep down in the rabbit hole. Like, how important is it to feed that beast? Not in your case, not literal beast.
Sure.
But how important is it to, like, what would you say to that person that's like, man, I'm really passionate about photography. Like, what would you say to that person that's just kind of that would be listening?
Well, let me ask you, how important is it to feed your soul? Right. And I think, like, my job, like, sure, it's great. They pay me, and I can live and I have nice things, but it's very soul sucking, right? It takes. It doesn't give back. It just takes, And
You're making Google sound like a great place to work.
It's any corporation, right?
Any corporate. I feel the same.
Well, I'll tell you, if you're going to hate your job anywhere, that's a great place.
It is.
It's a great job for hating your job. I don't hate what I do, but
I get what you're saying. Yeah.
You get worn down.
It's not your passion.
Yeah, and it just, you work on a thing. Oh, no, sorry, I'm not doing that anymore. Move on to something else. Okay, and you just had a lot of effort into something that kind of just got redirected.
Yeah.
And I still really enjoy engineering and,
Sure.
and digging into stuff and data analysis and all this nerdy coding and all other stuff. But, when you sort of get jerked around a bit, because that's just business and corporations, that they can't help it. It's just what it is.
That's how it works.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I don't begrudge them that. It's just sort of for my own sanity, I needed something else.
Sure.
And I have kids, and you put all your time into them and love on them and
of course.
make them perfect little human beings if you can, as much as you can. But I needed, I guess, something else,
Sure.
and due to all that other personal loss, it was sort of, I really need to find something that I can connect to and dive into. And it's, do I want to come home and just watch TV and hang out and do nothing and just kind of absorb media and content? And it kind of like getting into sourdough, we also got off of Facebook, and we just sort of really limited this sort of the echo chamber of social media. Because it just wasn't really challenging you. It wasn't really doing anything. And this is something that you can do when you come home, or if you have a day off. It's something that drives you to develop, right? And to think and to be better, right? And that passion, I think, is critical kind of for anybody.
Yeah, I think, with us, we're like, a lot of people ask us, it's like, what TV show you're watching? What are you doing? And we're like,
I'm like, I don't know.
Like stuff.
I don't know.
and
I have friends on in the background.
Yeah.
But I think that goes to a testament to, like, when we get home from work or whatever, we're not really just consuming social media. Yeah, I mean, we are. I am.
Of course,
Of course.
I'm on Instagram. Sure.
Yeah, but in terms of, like, we get obsessive over other things. Like, she's really into fitness and I mean, when you think of Sissi, right? Like, in the circle of friends, you guys are like, oh yeah, she works out, or Spartan. She does Spartan races.
Yeah.
Now she's doing CrossFit, right? And then, like, I get obsessive and compulsive. You can ask her. I'm like, I'm on Reddit. I'm looking up how to hack this thing or whatever. I'm like, I get really obsessed with stuff. And I think that really is important to kind of just feed the beast and feed your own curiosity, because you never, I think, know what you're going to unlock. But, to that, what I'm kind of trying to allude to is, like, was it one of those things where you're at work and then you needed a passion and you geeked over to, I don't know, like, how did you first, what were your initial steps from going into, did you, like,
From not doing it to start.
did you Google it, or did you, like, take a class? What'd you do? Like,
Sure. Well, and I'll give you like a little bit of lead up, like we did the GORUCK thing. I did 17 events over like a 2.5, 3 year period. And this was just, sort of after a ex-wife situation happened. I was like, I need to test my mettle. I need to punish myself in some meaningful way. And I did like a Spartan Beast.
Yeah.
Like, that was fun. I got poisoned out for 2 months, and it was terrible. Oh, yeah, it was the worst.
What venue was that?
It was in Toro Park in Monterey.
Oh.
I did the Beast way back. I think Stephen did
We
that.
all did
we all did that.
Monterey.
That was my first.
It was like
Spartan too.
2013.
That
Yeah.
was my first Monterey, the Beast. Yep, where you had that stupid rope climb. Like, it was just up a hill, and you're like, what is this rope supposed to do?
Oh no, the worst for
uphill.
me was the uphill with the bucket of like
Oh,
dirt
yeah, that
and
was
rocks.
steep. That was real steep.
Oh my god, that was the worst.
Oh, yeah,
I hated that one the most.
my calves just cramped out
Yep.
hard before, like, that invert wall, like the one you have to, like,
Yeah.
it's diagonally scaling around it. I was like, oh no, tweaky calves, oh no.
I told you
Yeah.
that- I don't think I've ever said this on the podcast, but yeah, same event. Speaking of calves, my calves locked up on same event where I was walking up and I literally just locked up. I was like, oh, I can't walk.
Oh, no.
I fell down, like, I straight up
God.
face planted, and, like, I had 4 friends with me, like, oh no, they started giving me packets. Then one guy was like, it's gonna look stupid, but I'm gonna punch the crap out of your calves. And you had like 4 guys punching my calves and people walking by and going, what are they doing? Beating this guy up? Like, all you see is this, just like 4 guys just punching the crap out of my calves. It helped, right?
Yeah.
That and mustard packets.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. But
So no, yeah.
Yes.
Whatever.
I got started.
Did that, and I was like, well, that was hard, but that wasn't hard enough.
Yeah.
That wasn't enough. And I had a coworker that was into, GORUCK backpacks. He wasn't going to do events, but he was like, oh, these backpacks are great. Oh, you should do an event. I'm like, what is this? I'm like, Like, no way. Like, you're dumb. No way I'm doing this. And, but fast forward after that, I'm like, well, maybe I'll give it a shot, right? And I did the same thing everyone does in their first GORUCK event, trying to figure out what do I bring. And this is like a pre 1000 class, and so there's nothing, right? And everyone's just like, nope, you got to figure it out. And I was like, do I bring my jet boil? Like, there's always that guy,
And you're like, how much clothes do I wear?
Oh God,
Imagine if you had bra.
It'd be terrible. Oh, it'd be so terrible.
You'd be that guy. And you'd be that guy.
Yeah, exactly. And I was that guy. I couldn't find like a jacket. I found this bright yellow one.
I remember.
Right? Yeah. Everyone's like, who's that guy in the bright yellow jacket? Trust me, I didn't want to buy that jacket. It's the only damn thing that they had. But I stood out because that first event with Cadre Paul, I mean, it was brutal.
That was brutal.
It was 15 hours for a tough, I guess, challenge now.
And
right?
he only stopped it because the light was about to start.
Exactly. Yeah. He just stepped off the light. Yeah. He's like,
that's why he's like, guys, we gotta finish this because the light's about to start.
Oh yeah, the welcome party was 4 hours long.
Yeah.
I threw up 3 times. I got tunnel vision. And what's funny is we were sitting there doing these, inverted push-ups or decline, feet up in the air doing a push-up. And I just got this tunnel vision. Everything was just going black. And I was like, oh no, And we took a break, and some guy's like, here, take these shot blocks. I was gray. I was dying. And he's like, here, drink this, eat these shot blocks. And I'm like, oh, rejuvenated. It's going to be better soon. And that was Stephen Datoma.
No way.
And we became friends later. But yeah, sure as shit, Stephen Datoma was sitting there doing that. I'm like, oh man, and saved my life in that moment. And then we started stepping off on the ruck, and it got better and then worse and then terrible. And that whole thing was awful. But, it started that whole train, and I was like, nope, did one, good enough. Don't want to do any more.
Of course.
But then a week goes by.
Yeah, of course.
And I'm like, that wasn't so bad.
I'm feeling good.
I've recovered now. It's not terrible. Maybe I'll sign up for another one, right?
Yeah.
And that was the first Cadre Flash one I had.
Oh.
It's in San Jose.
Okay.
1208. I still remember that one. And that was much easier. That was
damn, Flash!
Yeah.
If you're listening, Flash, know that class was very easy.
In comparison to Paul, it was not a cakewalk, but it was definitely okay, I could survive this one. That I feel like after that Cadre Paul class, they changed things a bit.
Sure.
Right? After in that range.
Pre-1000.
Yeah, I think there was a lot of complaining about just how brutal they were. And I think they kind of, they toned it down a bit. And I think that was one of the early ones that they toned it down a bit. Don't destroy these guys, just take them for a good time.
Yeah. They're not trying to pass elections.
I definitely do.
Yeah.
Actually, when I think about it in that aspect, I think it's, no offense, Jason McCarthy, if you're listening, I think it definitely, pre-1000, they were a different event in itself. And a lot to even say, maybe the first 100. Who knows how those first initial classes were.
Well, I think as a thing like that develops and it has broader reach to a larger segment of just generic population, you get people who become aware of it, right, that aren't the hardcore types. And if you kind of give that same sort of experience, it's a barrier to entry, I think, for the broader audience, And of course, you want to sell more backpacks. So it needs to change, right? And I don't, that was fine.
Whatever.
It is what it is. It was still hard. I mean, it's still GORUCK tough event, It was still really difficult. But I already had all my expectations broken on that first one. So anything less would be easier.
Right.
And I also trained, with Steven, and that's where I met Amanda, actually, in that time frame.
Did you do those his workouts?
I did.
Not the CWS. That was
Woody had put out a post saying, "Oh, there's we got Echo doing training here. We got Stephen Datoma down, Paul and Sandy down here." And I was like, "Oh, maybe I'll go try out this weekend." And it was sort of like a little, and actually Echo came down and he did a CWS that day, a 12-hour day. Basically started with a boot camp. Then we stepped off on a ruck. We got did sugar cookies and all the surf torture and did a bunch of beach PT, right? Ended up at the Stone Pier, right? All the way to Aptos, and then went to barbecue.
All the way to Aptos?
Yeah. We went from started where he lives, in Live Oak, all the way to Aptos along the beach. And we had to go along the road to
of course, but still, jeez.
And so it was basically a simulated GORUCK event. Yeah. Lightweight, but very hard.
Yeah.
And met my current partner there, which was actually pretty cool in itself. But
So we both of us, shout out to Stephen Daytona, Gauntlet Endurance,
Yeah.
have Stephen to thank for seeing or meeting our significant
Yeah,
others.
That's
because
true.
we met at Steven's first
Custom.
NordCal
Yeah, Nord.
yeah,
event.
Oh, yeah,
That's where
NordCal.
Arwin and I met. Yeah,
way back in the
We
day.
should get Daytona on.
I know.
That'd be
Stephen, so if you're listening,
You're next.
You're next, bro. But going back to that journey along from
In a long-winded way.
Yeah. It's okay.
yeah. Well, and actually, I'll fast forward.
Yeah.
Like, so, fast forward, a bunch of events and
Yeah.
customs. The Pinnacle was doing the last HCLS,
Yeah.
right, in San Francisco
Which-
during Veterans Day.
So good for you.
Ooh.
We never
We
that was awful.
we're gonna
Oh
go
my
on another
God.
tangent, but it's okay. This is really good.
I couldn't walk after that heavy.
Oh,
I
yeah.
could not
Oh.
It was so bad. I
She
was like,
woke me up for the challenge. Like, no. It was broken.
yeah.
Kick
I was
him.
like
Yeah.
trying to
Yeah.
walk up the stairs, and Mickey was like, "Do you need help?" And I was like, "I got this." He's like, Are you sure? I don't think you're gonna make it."
So just to give our audience who are not going
Context, yeah.
some context, HCLS, I know now they're called HTL,
Yep.
but they don't have the S. But it's basically a whole weekend event. Basically,
Starts
Thursday, you do a 24-hour event, immediately a short break, followed by a 12-hour plus event, followed by a supposedly 4 to 6 hour event,
Yep.
followed by a fun scavenger event.
Yeah.
So that
But you're so broke. You're just like,
you
okay.
basically block out
You're dragging yourself.
the whole
Yeah.
weekend. So, and there's a special select group that finished all events.
Mhm.
Cece and I attempted it. We got through just the heavy,
Mhm.
and as she just said, she
I could not walk.
ended up, you like microfractured your foot.
Yeah, I did.
Yeah.
Yikes.
Yeah.
Yeah, that whole thing was
That
the most difficult thing I've probably ever done.
same. That was the
physically.
most difficult heavy I've done.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah, that heavy was
so
brutal.
that was definitely one to remember for sure. I think that last long ruck. Settle the debate. How long do you think that ruck was? That last
Like
long
mileage
wise from Marin side that we were at.
I mean, the hustle back before the bridge closes?
Correct.
Yeah.
How far do you think that
We were
was?
double stepping the whole time.
Oh,
It was-
and she had the triple step. If you think about it.
Oh, sure.
Every
Yeah,
two
yeah.
steps someone takes, she has to take 4.
Sure,
right?
yeah.
So,
I think someone mapped it and it was like 28 miles or something total, like the whole thing.
Yeah.
But that was
last
the 12 miler, wasn't it?
supposedly.
It was
right?
supposed to be
Yeah.
I thought it was 14.
It might have been longer. Yeah, I would definitely probably say it was longer
Okay, so yeah.
in some
Some
way.
people thought it was shorter.
Landreth, you're wrong.
How long did Landreth think it was?
He said it was like 8 miles. I don't think so.
longer than 8 miles.
That was-
So,
So again, for context for our listeners, we were on the other side of the Golden Gate Bridge in Marin County,
yeah.
and
In the
we
headlands.
had a few hours left before they would close the bridge. So our instructions as a team was to two-step it before the bridge closed, and we were definitely more than 12. I'd say 14, but it's 12 more than 12 miles away.
Either way.
It was a lot.
That was a lot of
It was a-
rucking, a lot of shuffling fast.
Well, and after just the
beatdown we had.
oh man, like that water at the whatever beach we were at with the stinking
Oh,
God
and that
knows what.
Oh,
yeah.
The
that thing
lagoon
that was
thing.
dead.
Yeah, oh, there's lots of dead
Smell.
stuff.
Yeah.
And that dude came out with a flashlight.
Well, no,
He's
because
like,
remember,
"Can you guys be quiet?" I'm like, no, I can't be quiet. It's cold, man.
What are you talking about?
Yeah,
bro?
and then they made us
Oh,
run a
man.
mile. They made us do
That's right.
timed mile right after that.
Oh, I had the water buckets we had to carry. Like the farmer carries with like
Oh,
90
yeah.
pounds of water. I swear that was
forgot about
1,000
that.
pounds.
The
It felt
cake.
like my
We had to
hands.
carry the cake
Oh, the
and the
cake.
food, and we had to carry
oh,
our
that's
food.
right, the cake. Do they know about the cake?
I don't know. So we had the cake, right? And so we at the end the index. Remember, they put us in a circle and they asked us to
Just
eat it.
eat
And so
cake.
I was hungry, and so I was like, "Oh, ask a big boy to eat cake. Got you, fam. I can get this. We can index it right now. Just let me eat it." And so they were like, "Go." So I literally went up and like karate chopped it, my half, whatever the half of the cake, and shoveled it in my mouth. And so she comes up, right, and she's like, "What about me?" And I'm like, I threw it up. I was like,
You didn't throw it up. He like spit it
I
out.
spit it out and I gave it back to her. She didn't know. She popped it in her
Oh
mouth.
no!
And that's when I knew I would marry her.
That's a keeper. That's the keeper.
But yeah, I didn't tell her until like way after. She's like, I kind of baby bird fed you.
Yet in the moment, no one cares.
No
You're
one
so
cares.
tired.
Oh,
You're
yeah.
so hungry. You're just like, it tastes good.
Like, I think there's sand in this. I
Yeah.
don't care.
You don't
right?
care. It tastes good.
Well, and the challenge.
Yeah, we were. Oh man.
The challenge was I don't remember half of it because I've never actually slept walk like that before. Like I was delirious. I was seeing things, and I was just sort of like gray man in the back, just kind of teetering back and forth, trying to keep up. And I saw just like little things in the vision, just what's that? Like little demons, trying to chase you
saw the
down.
spirit animals.
Yeah, I saw the light, and and like every event, you eventually, kind of like go, oh, like you come alive again. There's a point at which you feel like you're gonna die, and the demons are telling you to quit, and then you hit the light. The morning light comes, and you just feel new again. You feel reborn on some level.
You're like, I'm almost there.
Yeah, but you're still just so deliriously tired at the same time. So all that, right? Did all that fun stuff. And then we sort of just stopped on some level. Amanda
I think
kept
it was
on.
2017.
It was 2017 or so.
We did the trifecta.
We kind of capped it out. We did a Spartan trifecta.
Yeah.
And the Beast was in Tahoe at where they had the Ultra Beast.
Yeah.
With the world championships.
And that was like, it's 30% longer, and there's like 30% more obstacles and stuff. Like, it was like a 17-mile beast. And we're like, oh
man.
Jesus, and so that kind of like, we kind of were broken
And it's
after that a
cold.
bit.
It is.
You never get warm again at some point. After you hit the water, I did like it was the rope ladder monkey bar thing right over the water, and I was like, this close to the end, and I fell in the water.
Oh, no. You had to knock out burpees?
And no, I fuck all you. No, we just you're not getting burpees. But the water was so cold, and I was so just heated and hot. Like my body went into shock a bit, and I started throwing up, and I was just like, I just had this moment where I just was like, I was gonna pass out, kind of thing.
Wow.
And she's like, you want to quit? I'm like, no, and it was like, Murr, and he's like, and we kept on going, and it was fine. But yeah, that really capped it off for us. And
that was like the last kind of endurance kind of event.
Yeah, she kept up with like triathlons and buys,
And I
like
fell
the
off my bike. And
swim run. Yeah, and she had a pretty bad bike spill and kind of injury, and we just sort of were done a bit. We just kind of had enough. Torture on the body, and then the back just starts to tweak a little bit when you carry a log on your shoulder and your head's cocked to one side. Yeah, and you're just like, that's not good for my back,
I feel you.
Yeah, and just I don't know. I think all that energy was channeled nowhere.
Sure.
And a lot of the friends kind of moved away, so we lost kind of a workout crew a bit.
Yeah.
And, Stephen had left for Massachusetts at the time, so there's no more beach PT to go to. So we kind of fell off that bandwagon a little bit. And other personal tragedy. And, just sort of was like, oh, what do I do? And I got into like embedded systems development, like Raspberry Pis and stuff, did a bunch of programming, like wireless testers and this and that. And that was
talk offline about some stuff I'm thinking about. But anyways,
cool. Yeah.
We don't want to make this a tech podcast now.
And it was a really cool skill to develop. I got my Python coding like way farther than what it was before. And actually, that's like, if you want to learn coding, have a purpose, have a direction, not just like, I'm doing some kind of class. And that's great to learn the content, but have a project, have something you want to do, because that really drives. I need to learn this thing and that thing, and you do the research, and it really drives you to understand what you need to do that thing. And in doing so, you gain so much more sort of that ancillary knowledge of a thing, and it intrinsically develops that core skill as well.
I mean, but it's kind of, you could say the same about baking.
Yeah. Well, and I did that for a bit, and that was great. And then I got this masterclass thing from Amanda, and that was really fun. Like, I want more, right? And then there was actually this YouTube video that was like this a quick little masterclass of sourdough video, and this Irish dude in Ireland was talking about how to do sourdough and just how to make your own starter. I'm like, I'm gonna do that, you know. And I got some books and just read and watched videos and read and just try to internalize all the steps, because there's so many steps to the whole thing, right? And each one of them is sort of a nuanced knowledge set in itself that you sort of have to develop. And I just started with just trying it. You know, I built my starter. Everything seems fine. Get nice and healthy. Let's make some bread. And, you know, it was good, tasty bread, a little dense, you know, was
Now you're critiquing your own.
Yes.
Oh, yeah, you have no idea. Like, no one can ever talk bad about my bread because I already said worse, sort of thing. Like,
I think that's important to self-assess.
I mean,
your own stuff. Yeah.
I think, you know, for me, maybe I can be a little too critical of myself, right? We're our own worst critics, obviously. And maybe I'm too hard on myself. And I think I know that I'm too hard on myself. So I know there's somewhere in the middle is the truth of it. But I also feel holding myself to my own personal standard is important, right? Like, oh, this is good enough. Like, is it though? Is it? You know, and it never is. But I also feel that if you feel like this is perfect, then you're never going to develop or try anymore, right? It's sort of that mentality. If you have a training somebody, you never really acknowledge how well they're doing, because then they'll just kind of give up. They think they've made it, right? And it's a little bit, you know, a negative place to be, but it leads people to strive to like, oh, I didn't get it this time, but I'm gonna do more and try harder. And that's always just kind of, you know, I'm a perfectionist, so nothing is ever perfect. And so that leads me to just always seek a deeper level, right? As much as I can. And that led me to doing an entire like online pastry school, basically, that I just wrapped up. And it was sort of, I need, you know, something else to sort of drive that knowledge. It just wasn't enough, you know, and I needed more. And I'm part of I absorbed as much information as I can. And doing that, it wasn't just bread, it was everything else. But I'm a baker, and I like knowing, and now I have this really broad knowledge of, you know, the construction of a cookie, right? From its ingredients, and what do all those things do, right? And then you can, it's not just a recipe anymore, it's a formula, and you can just tweak all the bits of the formula because you know how they work. It's not just 2 cups of this, 1 cup of that. Oh, I know if I increase the eggs a bit, I get this. If I decrease the butter, or if I melt the butter, or if I use brown sugar instead of white. And for bread, it was, you know, do I grind my own wheat? What flours am I using? How long do I ferment? How far do I push the fermentation, right? Because you go too far and the bread kind of collapses and it doesn't really do what you want. But if you don't do enough, you don't get the acidification, you don't get the air pockets that you want to see, like that crumb doesn't develop. The crumb is the inside of the bread. You don't get that if you don't kind of perfect all those things. And it was, you know, such a huge like body of knowledge to try to absorb that I wanted more. And after all of this, I spent 150 hours in a commercial bakery, doing, you know, 200, 300 loaves at a time kind of thing, in giant mixers and giant deck ovens. So I got this experience of what it takes to really crank out large amounts of bread in a sourdough way. And so that has completely kind of transformed my understanding of how things are. And I look at these videos I share with people just who want to get into sourdough. I have some just videos I made of basic handling. And I look at them now like, oh God, it's awful. Like, what am I doing? You know, this is terrible, you know? And so it's, you understand that at every step of the way, everything has a purpose, right? And if you're not careful and attentive to all of those steps, you won't really get what you want on the other side. You'll get good bread, right? You'll get fine bread, and people make perfectly tasty bread that they enjoy and they make for their home, and everything's great, and that's awesome, right? If you can make your own bread at home, do so, you know. But for me, I wanted that perfection. I wanted that ultimate, you know, I want to make it as good as the other bakeries are making it, you know, in a commercial setting. I know in a house setting, it's a little bit more difficult, right? Especially with the volume. There's just different scale considerations, and things were a bit different when you're doing small batches.
Yeah.
But that, nonetheless, I wanted to figure out what it took. And, I haven't baked since I finished the program, and tomorrow's the first mix day for me since. And so there's a lot to build back into my process, that is now kind of totally transformed.
So I'm curious, like, now when you go to restaurants,
That's a good question.
they give you bread.
I'm
I'm sitting there judging, like, I can't eat this.
Yeah.
They're shaking her head.
Yeah.
They're shaking her head. Do you want a side of bread? No.
No.
It's totally, we're just tearing them apart. Every time, your bread program, this is weak. This is commercial yeast, and, there's no flavor to this. There's no soul. This is, jeez, So, yeah, we get a little persnickety about it because.
But I think that's just a testament to being something that you're passionate about, right?
You know your craft.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Like, you were even self-criticizing. You're giving yourself a self-assessment. You're even critical of your own stuff.
Yeah, well, I don't think I'm doing everything perfectly.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And then that's okay, but at the same time, you're like, okay, now that you have a deeper understanding of your craft, right? You can appreciate when you get something that's not to a better standard. Then you know where it could be.
Yep.
Versus to where like what you're being served, right?
Mhm.
And I think that's some really good notes just to take in general with anything, right? When you've not become, an expert, but become someone that's really passionate about it, when you can do that and see things in a different light, right? So like more akin to like watching a movie. I bet you if Christopher Nolan's watching some kid's
Totally.
YouTube video, like the 20-second Vine or something, going,
What is this? Yeah.
Right? And it's just a deeper appreciation for the craft, right? Like there's different levels to it. There's a kid doing a YouTube video, and then there's, a top tier director, right? Or cinematographer. There's me baking,
Yeah.
flour, water, yeast, or whatever, and then there's you, and then there's there's a commercial, then there's like you, right? Like there's different levels to the whole just any craft.
Well, eat what you like, but I'm not here to judge anybody's choices. That's you do what you got to do. I had a point, I just lost it. But no, it's that's what it was. The more I've learned about sourdough and bread baking, the more I realize I know nothing. That there is, you walk in and with early knowledge, you don't understand maybe the full breadth of a thing. And you develop a certain amount of knowledge, you go, man, I know a lot. In comparison to what's out there, I know a whole bunch. But then when you push that knowledge to a certain point, there's a doorway that opens. And you see, holy shit, I don't have anything figured out.
Yeah.
I'm a child in a sandbox in comparison, to someone who's been doing this for so long. And it's just a tacit knowledge you have to build.
Yeah.
Right? You have to build this and internalize all those steps, and it can only be gained through time.
Yeah.
You can't rush into it. No one can tell you all you need to know. You have to feel the dough. You have to experience it. You have to see it rise and fail. And sometimes when I mess up, it's disappointing, but it's like, okay, well, that didn't work. Let me try something else. And it helps. Sometimes the failures are just as important as the successes, right? To help guide you to where you need to go, right? It's a path that you don't need to take anymore because you went down that already. But now you know. Right?
What's funny is like, when I'm listening to you, I know you're talking about bread, but at the same time,
it's anything.
It's anything, yeah. And I'm like, wait, that's right. You are talking about like bread, but there's a lot of parallels in that. I think maybe that's why bread shows up so many times in a lot of old folklore, and like it's important to a lot of families, right? Like,
well, when we went to Spain, like
huge.
It's like we're walking around. People are just walking around with like loaves of bread. They're like, oh yeah, it's just the bread for the day.
Like in Egypt during the Arab Spring, there was riots and protests and whatnot. The one thing that was open, the bakeries.
Wow.
Because to that culture, bread it's critical. And if you want to see real riots, you see the bakeries go down, right? And nobody messes with that. That's an institution. It is a sacred institution that this bread that I get every day, don't mess with that. That is core fundamental things, right? And it has been so for so many cultures and peoples. And it's just, that whole, back in the day, the farmer, the mill, and the baker, right? There was this natural trifecta that supported the community, right? And so you had the guy who made the wheat, the person who could mill the wheat into flour, and the person who can then craft that flour. And they all exchange, right? I give you bread, you give me flour, right? Maybe the mill gives the farmer flour to make his own bread, right? For the wheat. And there's this whole exchange of goods. And one kind of fun point I learned, most places had a community oven, right? Ovens were kind of large, difficult to build.
Yeah.
And so there might be one for the town where everyone brought their bread to be baked. And the reason for the scoring on top was to identify your loaf of bread. So you gave it's also to control how it opens up.
Sure.
Right? The scores help it to that internal crumb to develop and expand. And that's important to do properly, but it's also a way of identifying, right, what it is. And in commercial bakeries, you score it sort of for what it is. Oh, the country levain is this one, the sesame is that one, right? And there's some clear indicators if it has oats all over it. But
Yeah.
for other breads that might look similar, but their composition is different, you'll score them differently. And that way you know when they come out of the oven which one it is. And for other people, that was kind of your mark. Your brand was sort of that scoring pattern. And that's sort of the artistic part too. You kind of get like a chance to make a cool design or, find the better way to score things.
Yeah.
Nice.
But yeah, it's such a important part of human history, right? Bread. And it was the one thing that you got more out of for the components that went in, right? Like meat is just a pound for pound, right?
Yeah.
That's it. But you take this flour and combine it with water, you get something greater, right? You get more food out of it. So the efficiency of bread is tremendous, right? Especially for feeding people.
Yeah.
Because it's so nutritious and long lasting, right? That it just became a center point for the diet.
That's interesting because,
Knowledge
if you think about it, right, like when they think of prisoners, it's like, oh yeah, they always get like bread and water. And it's like, that's all you need. It's just bread and water.
The proper bread. Yeah.
Yeah, the proper bread. Yeah.
There's a clear distinction there.
The university I went to, Washington State University, it's centered right in the middle of like a huge amount of wheat fields. And they have a whole bread lab there. That wasn't doing it back then, you know, had I known. But they had this whole Instagram post talking about white bread. And they had the nutritional breakdown of just plain old white bread, that not enriched, and there's almost nothing to it.
Wow.
It was literally nutritionally barren. Like, it was just such an example of,
Yeah.
That process just doesn't really yield something that is good for you.
Yeah.
Right. And it's actually harder to digest.
Yeah.
And with sourdough specifically, right, with long fermentations, you get all those benefits. And pro tip, if you're at a bakery and you see the pain au levain, Levain, that's sourdough. Levain means sourdough.
Oh,
And so-
I did not know that.
Yes. And so you're like, what's this pain au levain stuff? Yeah, no, just take that thing over there. Right? No, that's the one you want.
Okay.
Yeah, country levain, country loaf often will be
So
sourdough.
Levain.
Levain.
Okay.
It's like the French word for starter, right? Or for sourdough.
Oh,
And
interesting.
sourdough is a misnomer, like the whole San Francisco sourdough being really tangy, they add stuff to it.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Was my bread sour?
No.
Not really. Now you can make it more sour.
Sure.
You can make the starter go a little longer before you use it. It gets
Yeah.
more alcohol and acidity to it. You can certainly
There's
make
a different taste to it for sure. It's like there's a definite different taste to it than like regular bread.
There's a wholesome bite to it. It doesn't feel like if you chew on like Wonder Bread, it becomes this weird mash in the roof of your mouth. It
Yeah.
kind of sticks to the roof of your mouth. Where this chews and it just breaks apart as if it's this hearty, sustaining, substantial thing. When you eat it, you feel satisfied. You don't feel like, oh, I'm weighed down by bread. It's light. It dissolves and breaks down very easily, very readily, because it's been half digested by the yeast already. And all the nutrients are there, all the acidity, all the things that you need to have a nourishing meal are kind of built in. So yeah, the levain, that's the one you want to go for.
Levain. Now we know.
Yeah. And they'll have it too.
Ordering bread, like, do you have any Levain?
They're like, no, we don't. I'm like, never mind.
Yeah.
I will not take a side of
Gosh.
this. So I mean,
Well, actually, so I'm curious. So you talk a lot about how you like self-assess. Do you like write that down somewhere, or is it just like mental notes?
I used to write down the formulas that I put together, and it's just percentage of the wheat I use versus like just white flour. It's like 60 to 7% like bread flour, right? And then, 20 to 30, 10, whatever you want, of some kind of whole wheat. And I've been grinding my own more recently, and you can really smell like the cereal, grassy quality of the grain when you mill it fresh, and it adds like a whole new layer of flavor and dimension that, it almost tastes like cereal on some level. If you just eat it as it is, it has like a toasted oaty wheat sort of cereal flavor to it, right? But not being actual cereal. And that's where all that fundamental flavor comes from, right? And so I used to write down how much salt, how much what wheat and what flour and this and that, and how long I proofed it for, and how long I, bulk fermented, and the bake times and all that. I did it for the first 100 loaves, and because I was doing them 2 at a time, and so I just had a little, sheets file.
Oh, it seems so long ago.
Right, of that. And I just stopped doing it at some point, just like, and then I started making more like 8 loaves at a time.
Yeah.
And then I got to 16 loaves at a time. And at that point, it's more about that natural feel, right? How did I know what I did, how did that come out? I kind of pushed the fermentation a little farther this time.
So
there was more slack. But,
even though it's not written out, there's still some degree of not QC per se, but there's still some degree of you going, that wasn't it.
Yeah, I
can do better on that one.
I have a formula, right? Like everything
of course,
is measured out very precisely, right? With scales and scale. If you bake, get a scale.
Okay.
Volume measurements are garbage. Get a scale. There's cheap ones out there. You have much more consistent baked goods if you weigh things.
Yeah.
It's the way to do it. So everything's weighed out very precisely in order to achieve consistency. But then, I haven't, nothing has been like, that's it. That's the process, and honestly, you can never really get there because the flour you get might be a little bit different, right? How much water did it absorb this time? That might change depending on the batch of flour you get, right? The water, the temperature, like the ambient temperature in the bakery was X this day, and it caused it to do Y, right? And since sourdough you are subject to it and its nature, you just have to work with it. You don't control the sourdough so much. Now, it doesn't mean that it's completely got you, by the short and curly, so to speak. It's you control how you want to bake your bread. And all of those steps can be kind of infinitely tuned, right? Like right now it takes, I'm going to start tomorrow morning and I'll probably be dividing and shaping around 4 or 5, right? So it's about a 7 or 8 hour period, right? And then I put those in the fridge and I'll bake them the next day, right? And that fridge gets it like real good slow fermentation and real deep flavor comes from that. So the slower the fermentation goes, the better, right? That's way more flavor. And so that process is great, and I work from home, so I kind of have a little flexibility to take a meeting, do my folds, do this, right? So I can kind of sort my day out how I want. But if I get real busy, I lose that opportunity.
Sure.
So we're already trying to figure out, okay, I'll get my starter set so it's ready by 5 p.m. And I'll do the first set of kind of bulk, fermentation throughout the night. And by like 10 at night, 11 at night, I'll just put it in the fridge, like all the dough in the fridge.
Okay.
And the next day, I might, divide and shape and put them in their bannetons. And maybe I let them just sit out for a couple hours and then I bake them. Or I put them back in the fridge, right? And you get a little more fermentation, right? And you can play with all those variables, right? Maybe you don't do so much warm fermentation up front because you can do a bunch of cold fermentation and cold proofing later. So all of those things are at your control, right? And so you don't, you bake the bread, it doesn't bake you, right? Kind of thing. So you decide how that happens. But if it's not fermenting enough, if it's not ready yet, you can't force it, right? It will tell you when it's ready, kind of thing.
So, you finished the class.
Yeah.
What's next for Briarwood Bakery?
It's so a lot of the, like as I got to like 8 and 16 loaves at a time, we had a lot of extra, right? We go through maybe 2 loaves a week. And so it was like, oh man, like, and we just started giving it out, right? As you guys have received. And, I'm not making anybody pay for this yet because I'm just playing. I'm just figuring it out, right? So it's just, here's some free bread. But it's not consistent. I'm not, you can't guarantee you're going to get a loaf and that sort of thing. But people have indicated kind of like you were saying, like, oh my God, I want more of this bread.
Yeah.
Amanda's a teacher, and so a lot of our loaves go there, and so there's a distinct following at the school.
Sure.
The barber I go to, I gave them bread, and they're like, "Oh my god, when you're ready, man, like we're gonna be
I'm the
first."
same thing. We're saying the same thing here.
Right.
So there's a general consensus here.
And we've asked people, would you buy it on a subscription type thing? Like every week, would you get a loaf of bread? Like, so I know if I make a loaf, it's sold kind of thing.
Yeah.
So I have at least maybe 20 loaves out of the 50 are already sold. And like, hey, I got Instagram. Hey, I got 30 loaves. Who wants
Patent
some?
pending, guys.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. This is coming. But that's sort of the next step, is to figure out how to work a mix and bake schedule into my job. Yeah. Something that Amanda can help as well, because she's more of a 9 to 5, like at a place. I have the tech worker, work from home kind of thing. And it's just figuring out what that bread program looks like, getting our equipment in order to handle the volume, right? And we're very close to about 50 at a time. That's sort of the goal right now. Beginning of summer, 50 loaves, right? Maybe that's like, I mix Tuesday, Wednesday I mix again, but I'm baking Tuesday's bread, right, on Wednesday. Yeah. And then I'm baking Wednesday's bread on Thursday, right? That sort of thing. And so it's like a 2-step, and we have 2 batches. The oven I have only handles like 8 or 9 loaves at a time. Yeah. So if I did 50, that would be all day baking, right? That's,
The smell in this home.
in the garage. Yeah. So it's, figuring out those logistics, and getting the ability to have weekly consistent bakes where people can then rely on a bread that's available to them, right? That is, as they found out, this is how real bread should be. And that's kind of a thing going on, real bread, right? And everyone talked about sourdough, like, oh no, this is real bread, right? Not that fake shit over there, right? So
I like it.
Once people find
that's
out.
The slogan right there.
Yeah, I mean,
it's bigger, real bread.
Yeah, I mean, that is kind of it's naturally leavened real bread.
It's on the template for the logo.
Yeah, logo. That's so hard. It's just ridiculous. But that's kind of next. And it's actually becoming a cottage food business. So California, we're lucky. We have, and a lot of states do have something like it. You can produce from an approved list of items at home in your home kitchen products. And bread is on that list. And so I can start a business that is a cottage food licensed establishment and label things and sell people bread, for actual revenue and taxes and all that stuff gets worked out. And it becomes a side business at that point. And it's going to start real small because I still got to work the 9 to 5.
Yeah, of course.
And I think 50 is an achievable, decent target. And for the kind of user base we got, I think that's going to be enough. And it'll be sort of, it might grow as people will start spreading the word, but there's only so much.
You scale appropriately when you scale when you want.
It's kind of, we play how we want to play.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's important to reiterate kind of something I've heard, and I want to reiterate here, is like 1 job or 2 jobs, one paycheck kind of thing. Yeah. Right? That's a side hustle or side business. Yeah, sure. I think it's one of those things where if you're really passionate about it, expect to have the 9 to 5 still, right? And then if you're really passionate about your side hustle, to keep working at it, at any moment, right? And that's kind of a testament to this podcast, right? When I'm at home or even on my lunch, I'm looking at stuff and reading and just kind of diving deep or getting into, the weeds of it. I'm okay, I used to do the same thing too with my YouTube channel. It's I had the 9 to 5, post-college student kind of thing. And then I was like, you know what, let's give this YouTube thing. And I always do it on the side and get really super obsessed with it, And so, I mean, it's really amazing to see kind of your journey go from the engineer at a tech company to, endurance athlete, I guess, and then kind of turn some of your journey along the way into a passion, right? A passion that has a lot of parallels to anything, right? Exactly. It's kind of like break bread and you share bread and you make bread, and there's a lot of parallels in life you can take from it. But it's really interesting to see that, like I said in the beginning, this area, Silicon Valley, is very known for startups in the garage, and
Entrepreneurism.
Yeah, I mean it's one of those things where you're starting it in your garage, but it's a passion, and I'm not even going to wish you luck because I know I can sense the passion, and every time we've talked, it's always like wow, hold on, I didn't know that about bread.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And you always learn, and and I'm like, geez, and when I've come in here to pick up the bread, I smell it, and then we just talk more and more about Briarwood Bakery, right?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I think and so.
I think we're just really excited to see
I
it
really
like
would.
develop.
What happens.
Yeah.
What happens? Where it
Yeah.
goes? Where the
Me too.
where the dough dough rises? You know.
So many great bread pies. Too many.
But again, where can people follow you along this journey that may be listening? Listeners of ours, friends and stuff like that. Where can they follow you, Zach and Amanda, on this journey?
Well, right now, Instagram is probably the best place. Briarwood_bakery. BRIAR wood, all one word, _bakery. And that's where we kind of post up stuff we're making. And, it's bread, but I also want to give people like, hey, it's Thanksgiving. You need a pie? You need some buns, right? I make some great Hokkaido milk buns, right? And that are soft and delicious.
By the way, did you? Yeah, last pie day we went
That's
to.
true.
So
Pie party.
So
Pie party.
little tangent.
Yeah.
A mutual friend of ours, Sean, used to hold a pie party.
Oh, great party. Great idea.
So the whole premise behind the pie
Fantastic.
party is basically they invite all their friends and you come over and you bring a pie, you bake a pie. Doesn't matter if
You
it's
buy a
sweet,
pie.
savory, or we always bought.
Yeah.
It didn't matter if it was savory, sweet. You submitted
There's like different categories.
Yep.
Yeah.
and we basically you could sample. Each one's had a number or tallied, and then you would vote.
You judge,
So and the last pie party they had, the last pie party we went to, you won. Who won?
Yeah.
Right. Someone won. You won.
You
You
won.
won overall.
But
Yeah. See. So
Best
But that's
overall,
what the-
but not like the other subcategories.
yeah.
This
But
is
you
one
won
of them.
overall.
Well, I brought
was
a
it?
spiced lamb hand pie.
that's right, the hand
It's
pie.
savory
Where'd
meat.
you win the first time?
I think that was the first time. That might be the
went
one.
twice.
We went twice.
You won
Yeah.
twice.
They won twice, yeah.
Do we win?
Twice.
Do we win again?
Yeah.
The last one I
Oh.
remember you won. We stayed.
I don't know. Whatever. I don't remember. But
Champion here.
He's like, I win so much, I don't even
I don't care. Don't about it.
Oh come on.
It's not for the glory. That was GORUCK. That's not the glory. But the trick is everyone brings a sweet pie.
Yeah.
Bring a savory pie because they just stand out. No one has one.
Yeah.
It's true.
Right.
Yeah.
And you just
We always brought a sweet pie.
and it's I've made these spiced lamb hand pies for several occasions, and
Yeah.
they're a hit every
So
time.
Briarwood
Just savory
Bakery.
pies.
It's Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
2020.
2020,
If you need an
guys.
apple pie, you want a pumpkin
There you
pie. I
go.
make really good pie crusts, all butter pie crusts that are delicious. I do all kinds of stuff.
Thanks for having us and inviting us into your kitchen
You're very welcome.
to see everything and tell us your story and say thanks.
Yeah, thank you
Appreciate that.
for hearing out. It was great.
Yeah, thank you.
Cool.
All right, guys. So a quick note here before we take off. It was a great pleasure talking with Zach and catching up with him and seeing what he's doing with Briarwood Bakery and turning a passion really into something of a business for himself. And again, make sure you guys go follow him on Instagram, Briarwood Bakery. And speaking of Instagram, make sure you guys follow us. That's F2F Podcast, number 2. On Instagram, visit our website. That's f2fpodcast.com. And make sure you listen to us anywhere you guys enjoy listening to podcasts. We hope you guys enjoyed this episode, and we'll see you on the next one.